Hello and welcome to the show. My guests today are Katie and Dawn of the Simmons family. Dawn and her husband Ray have 9 children, and Katie is one of their daughters. I learned of their story when reading about Dawn's car accident with her 3 youngest children, Kamryn, Lindy, and Christopher, as well as Christopher's girlfriend. All 3 of her youngest children were killed in that car accident when hit by a drunk driver. He died on the scene. Katie and Dawn have made it their mission to bring awareness to the impact of drunk driving and to make sure that the children's memory is never forgotten. It's hard to believe that we are still having conversations about the impact, implications, pain, and ripple effect of drunk driving. But as long as there are families like the Simmons family, the conversation must continue. Katie and Dawn came on the show with transparency, fully willing to share their story, and there was no way to trim it down or edit pieces out. So the conversation went on for 2 episodes. This is a 2-part episode, this week and next. Their hope is that people will think twice, 3 times, 4 times before getting behind the wheel of a car when drunk. Here are Katie and Dawn. Thank you, Katie and Dawn, for being here today. I'm just honored to help share your story and honor your children and your family. And we're going to get through this episode the best we can. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So a mother of 9 children,
Yes.
9 children. We said before we got on the air that that's a show in itself and lots of stories to tell, I'm sure. And let's talk about your lives beforehand, both Katie and you, Dawn. Talk about your lives before, your lives with your siblings, your lives as a mother, your life as a mother, and just help us get to know you a bit.
Well, having 9 children was the absolute joy of my life. It is definitely my life revolved around them. We did life together. Every day I enjoyed every single moment of it. A lot of our days, me and the girls would come here and see Katie, and we just really did life together. It was just like I said, it was just the joy of my life. These kids were the joy of my life.
And Katie, where are you in the birth order of all the kids?
I'm the second to oldest.
Second to oldest. So you've
So
been
me and the youngest. Yeah, me and the youngest are 16 years apart.
Okay. And so how was that for you growing up with 9 siblings? Being that you were the oldest, some of them did, they were babies when you were coming up. So what was that like for you?
There was always something going on at the house. And while I was growing up and still living there, they were, annoying little siblings. But as I got older, they really started to kind of become like my kids in my eyes. I would take my youngest sister with me all sorts of places. Lindy, the oldest one that passed away, she was my little boy's nanny. She was my teenager's best friend. We just were so close as we were getting older. We weren't always that close with a big age gap, but as we were growing older, we were becoming so close.
And that's got to be a good feeling for you, Dawn, because to raise your kids to become friends.
Yes.
You and your husband, Ray, to raise your kids to become friends.
And there was something about the last 3 that they just had really a special connection with each of the siblings. They really did. They really had a special connection with each one. And it was a beautiful thing for me to watch as a mom. I loved it.
And they're the babies. We're talking about Lindy and Christopher and Kamryn, of course. And take a moment to talk about each of them, both of you, Lindy and Christopher and Kamryn. What was Lindy like? I know with 9 children, they're all so different, right?
Right.
What was different about the 3 of them?
Lindy was our memory maker. She videoed, photographed, documented everyday life. She was the most creative person I have ever known. She was a brilliant photographer. She had just landed her little dream job at college. She was hired as the campus photographer. That was in November of 21. She was supposed to start that position in January of 22 for the spring semester, but unfortunately, that day never came for her. Lindy loved life and lived it to the fullest. Katie went through her phone because we just wanted all the memories, and there were like 55,000 videos and pictures that
Captured everyday
life. And she captured like birthdays, graduations, and weddings and things like that. But the things that are so dear to my heart were the everyday events. She has video of her and Kamryn in Walmart where nobody was down the aisle. She'd set up a phone, and she and Kamryn would do a little dance. They have video of them pumping gas, doing a little spin, fist bumping. Just everyday life. I tell you, it is just so, I just treasure that with all my heart. And Christopher was, he was a remarkable young man. He was an amazing athlete. He was so academic. He was going to be valedictorian of his class. I've never had a teenager who took the time and before he made a decision, weighed it out to really value how it would affect his life. If I could say, Lord, I want a son and I want him to be this, 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 and this. When I tell you, Christopher checked every box. He wanted to go to college to be a software engineer like his older brother Ren. He was striving to make a 32 on his ACT. He had his highest score before the crash was a 26. And he told me on the Christmas break, Mom, I need to get some study guides in science and math. And I tell you, I have no doubt that he would have achieved that goal. He was such a young man of integrity, which is one of the things that I just love most about him. If Christopher gave you your word, you could count on it. The siblings called him the angel child. He was a good boy. Good kid, just a good kid. And then Kamryn was 15. She was 41 days short of her 16th birthday, 41 days short of getting her driver's license, which she was so excited for. Kamryn was the kindest child I've ever met in my life. It truly hurt her heart when she saw people hurting. Like when we would leave Walmart, sometimes they had the little homeless people holding up a sign for a little money for food or something. If I didn't have money in my purse, Mom, go to the money machine. I mean, it truly just hurt her heart. And because she had her driving permit, her and I really spent like a lot of time together that last year. And she would put her little playlist in and she would sing and sing and sing. That child had the most beautiful singing voice. And I tell you, it's one of the things that I miss so much today because I drive alone a lot now. And I tell you, I look and I long to hear her little voice. Katie actually found she had recorded herself singing in our living room one day. And many, many times when I'm driving, I'll put that on so that I can hear her sing. And
wow, that's just, I'm so glad that you captured all that, Katie, and that you had the thought to get all of that from the phone and have that for your whole family.
I'm so thankful we were able to get into most of their stuff. We weren't able to get into Christopher's, but the girls had more than him anyway. So they really left us with a lot of treasures.
And Dawn, for you to just share all of that about each of your kids, and then Katie to say, yes, he was such a sweet boy. I've watched your reels and I've watched your story unfold for a while now since I first discovered it. And I don't feel like you're just a mom talking about her kids and exaggerating their traits. I believe that they were just really good kids who were on a really wonderful path. And I believe that. I believe that. Let's take a break. And when we come back, Katie, let's talk about the GoFundMe. And Dawn, let's talk about the crash itself and your recovery and this this crusade that you're both on to make sure people, first of all, do not forget your children, but also do not forget what happened. And I can't believe all these years later, we're still talking about drunk driving and the tragedies it causes. I grew up during the MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers time. I heard about it all the time. And you would think all these years later that we'd have this figured out. But it's because we don't, we're here to talk about it. And so I want to help share your story, and we'll do that. We'll come back in just a moment. You were both sharing details about your children, Dawn, and just their personalities and what they contributed to the world. And, just here to honor Lindy, Christopher, and Kamryn. Katie, you started right away with this GoFundMe and this awareness, bringing awareness to the plight of your family. Dawn, you were still hospitalized with your critical injuries. You didn't even know about the loss of your children yet. And tell us about the GoFundMe, Katie, and what your thoughts were in deciding we're going to be upfront and transparent about what's happened. You just started that real crusade mentality from the start.
And that's kind of just my personality, how I've been as long as I've been around. My best friend had got in touch with someone who was a witness to the crash, and he thought that the man who killed the kids might have been homeless. They said he had a bunch of trash in his truck and that he was found in his underwear, which we've confirmed with the state trooper afterwards. But when I heard he was homeless, I said, there's no way he's going to have insurance if he's homeless. And my mom worked for the post office. She was a mail carrier, and my dad had just retired 17 days before. I mean, they've always, they've had insurance and stuff like that. But the extent of this crash, I didn't know what was in store. So I talked it out with my family.
Know that your mom would, obviously, how would she maybe ever even work again?
Exactly. I know her injury.
The emotional.
Exactly. The emotional, and both of her legs were severely broken. Being a mail carrier, it's an extremely physical job. I just wanted to do as much as I could, as quick as I could, to lessen any kind of burden on them. And I talked it out with my best friend, she's been my best friend for 20 years now. She said, just do it. Just put it in it, just do a GoFundMe. I did one with a goal of $50,000, not knowing that even the triple funeral costed more than that. And it just took off. I was very detailed in the story of that night, which was very traumatic, of how everything unfolded, how we found out each kid passed away. The whole thing was really tragic. And I think it just really moved a lot of people. And that's how it grew to what it is. And that's why so many people know the kids today. From that's where the seed was planted.
It's really remarkable. And I do think the details were so important to understand where we're giving, what were we giving of ourselves, and who we were giving it to, in terms of the GoFundMe. And then, of course, just continuing the awareness that you've brought to the entire world about your siblings. You said you're comfortable talking about that night. I think it's important for people to understand the magnitude of what you've experienced. Katie, I know you were corrected at a Christmas party when you got the news.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that night.
I was at my brother-in-law's house. They had a Christmas party. It was the Friday before Christmas. I knew my mom, my 3 siblings, and my brother's girlfriend were going to a basketball game. And I was talking with a girl at a party, and my phone rang at 10:29, and it was my dad. My dad usually doesn't call me, much less late on a Friday night. So I answered, and he said, Mom's been in a wreck. It doesn't look good, but she's stable. So I immediately grabbed my husband. I said, we have to go. Get in the car. We raced to the hospital. My dad tried to talk me out of it. He's like, don't know. You have your kids, which my kids were at a babysitter. He didn't know that. He said, you have your family. It's really foggy out. I don't want you driving. I'm like, no, which hospital? So she was at Lafayette General, which was about 40 minutes from where I was. We raced over there. As I pulled into the parking garage, I saw my dad and the brother that's right under me panicking. So I stopped the car, put it in park, told my husband to go finish parking it. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, Facebook is saying there's been 2 fatalities. So I immediately looked it up on Facebook. Sure enough, 2 fatalities, multiple others in critically injured. So we start panicking, and my mind's just not believing that it's the same wreck. I don't see any names on there. I'm like, that could be any wreck. That's on the interstate. It could be anyone. So I go into the ER, the front desk. I ask, is my mom there? My siblings, my brother's girlfriend, only my mom and my brother's girlfriend was there. And that was so confusing to me. Why would they not be there? So another brother, Kyle, started calling the local hospitals around Lafayette because they have like 2 or 3 in that area. They weren't there. So my best friend said maybe, and me and her were texting the whole time. She said maybe they were airlifted. So she starts Googling all the hospitals around the area, expanding further and further, and sending me the phone number. So I'm steady calling. No one has them. So the state trooper calls my dad, and he said the other driver of the vehicle passed away and the young blonde driver. We figured that was Lindy. Lindy had all blonde hair, and Kamryn kind of had it like an ombre. So it could have been Kamryn, but I didn't think my mom would let Kamryn drive that far. It was 4 hours away with her permit. So we figured it was Lindy, but still, until I had confirmation, I wasn't going to believe it. So the state trooper said they're most likely at a hospital called Opelousas General, which is about 30 minutes away from where we were. So my mother-in-law came, picked me and my husband up, and we just drove that way. I said, I don't know if they're there. Let's just go. It's the best we got. On the way, I called again, and I said, I know y'all said y'all don't have anyone by these names, but can you tell me if you have anyone that's been in a crash at all? They said, yes, you can come identify her. And I was like, what do you mean identified? She said, you can come look at her and see if you know her. It was very cold. So we went, and I showed up. Charge nurse came out. He said, what does your sister look like? He said, I'm going to tell you now, the young lady that I have here has expired. I said, okay. Trying to explain what she looks like. I can't get it out. My husband said, show him a picture. So I show him a picture of both sisters. He said, come with me. And I start panicking. My husband says, you don't know if it's her. I'm like, he's bringing us to the back. I know it is. So we walk in. I'm fully expecting to see my sister, Lindy, the 20-year-old. And when we walk in the door, there's a body bag zipped up, a white body bag. And the doctor unzips it, and it's my sister, Kamryn, the youngest sister. And she looks perfect. She looks like nothing is wrong with her. Now, he only unzipped it from her chest up, and I told him, are you sure? Are you sure y'all tried everything? She looks fine. And he said, she was so bad off when she got here. Every limb was broken. There was nothing we could do. And as sad as I was and crushed as I was, I knew I needed to find the other 2, because I was just imagining them wondering, where's my mom?
Your family, right?
Right. So I called my dad and I let him know. I said, Dad, they had it wrong. It wasn't Lindy. It was Kamryn. So he's crying. He says, okay. I said, I'll call you when I find out more. My mother-in-law asked the charge nurse, can you please make some calls and find where the other 2 kids are? He left. He came back. He said, okay, I found your brother. He's at Bunkie General, which is another hospital that was near the crash. And I said, oh, thank God he's okay. And I said, well, I know he's not okay, but at least he's alive. And he just shook his head no. And I just remember my husband saying, what the hell? Like, we were just in shock. And I said, well, what about my sister, my older sister, the older one? And he said, she's still trapped in the car. And I said, well, is she alive? And he said, oh, no. So just in a matter of 5 minutes, I learned they were all gone. And the whole way to the hospital to see my mom, they weren't even on my mind. They were kids. So if my mom survived, of course they're going to be fine. They're young, healthy kids.
And your dad knew nothing, because all he said is come to the hospital.
Right. They wouldn't tell him about the kids because I think they knew how bad it was. And when I called my dad back to let him know that it was all three, during that time that I was finding out, a state trooper got to the hospital and let him know that all three had passed away. So we essentially found out at the same time, but just in different ways. Right.
Let's stop here for a moment and take a break and come back.
Lindy, you're so 100 pounds.
In the Broussard Walmart. Yes.
But nobody's home. There ain't no love like our love. There ain't no love like our love.
So Dawn and Katie, we've discussed off the air now that we're going to continue this conversation. And Dawn, there's so much more that you want to share about your experience and your side of things, and it's important to both of you and to your entire family that we give it time and justice. There's nothing I want to cut from this episode, and there's so much more I want to ask and that you want to share. So we will end the show here, and we will both we'll all three stick around and continue this conversation, and it will air next week. So thank you for wanting to continue to share, and I left it up to you, and you're good with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll wrap up now, and then we'll be back with more next week.